Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this next session in our SAEG Solution Series. Quite a few of you probably just coming back from a bit of a break, so I hope everyone is nice and refreshed. And of course, this series has been created for our consultant members to showcase their solutions and to show how they can assist with optimizing your SAP systems and projects. Today, our topic is on how to better control key business processes and, of course, delight executives with SAP Fiori, even if you're still waiting for S/4HANA. So before we start, just a few details. This webinar is being recorded. The recording and a copy of the presentation will be made available on the SAEG website shortly, and we'll notify everyone when it's ready. Everyone is on mute, but you can ask questions at any time using the question function on the right of your screen, and we'll go through questions at the end. There'll also be contact details on the slide, so if you'd like to ask any questions in the future, you can contact the presenter or even email us at any time at SAEG, and we'll pass the questions on. Special thanks to IQX Business Solutions for their support of SAEG and for making this session possible. Now, without further ado, to introduce today's speaker, we're very pleased to have with us Richard Fickberg, who's the CEO of IQX Business Solutions. Thank you, Richard.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michael, and thanks everyone for your time today. Yeah, very excited to talk about Fiori and how it can apply to some of your critical business processes, and in particular, the CapEx process is an area that we see Fiori playing a pivotal role in supporting. So I assume that you can see my screen, and we'll get into it. How SAP Fiori is enabling digital processes to identify, select, budget, forecast, procure, monitor, capitalize, and review your major project investments as a key example. So really, in a nutshell, what I'm going to be talking about today is, first of all, the imperative, I think, to modernize your SAP technical landscape, and if for no other reason than attracting and retaining key staff. I'm sure everyone's struggling at the moment to engage talented SAP professionals, and they all want to know what your organization is doing with, the new S/4HANA or Fiori. And I think we're all excited about the opportunities presented by the new technology, and we all want to get our hands onto it. I guess a lot of our customers are finding that senior execs, don't invest in projects for the sake of new technology. What they invest in is projects that are going to make their lives better and easier, more effective. And what a number of our customers have chosen is the CapEx cycle as an area that really is most important to your senior executives. And if you can really fundamentally improve the way that whole CapEx process works, whilst adopting some of these new technologies like Fiori, that's an investment they are willing to make. So we can really achieve two birds with one stone by solving a critical business problem and getting exposure to some of the new technology. And I suppose the good news is that you don't have to wait for S/4HANA. If you want to start getting your business excited about the potential of S/4HANA and Fiori to change the way that your users interact with SAP, starting with their most important use case is a very good place to start. There are a couple of warnings here that, Fiori is a great technology around user experience, and S/4HANA delivers a bunch of standard apps. There's already standard apps before you even get to S/4HANA, but they, almost by definition, don't really cut the mustard, and that they are still generic. And the whole premise of Fiori is a highly tailored and intuitive end user experience. So one needs to do more than just adopt standard Fiori apps to really engage and delight your key executives. And I think what we're seeing more and more organizations doing is really adopting Fiori as kind of their user experience and digitalization layer. And by adding workflow into your Fiori apps and this concept of orchestration into your Fiori apps, it makes a big difference. And by orchestration, I mean one Fiori app, that captures necessary data and goes through a workflow, and then in itself triggers a number of back-end SAP transactions. So we really focus first on the users and on what they're trying to do, and secondly, what transactions result from that decision. And that might apply in any process area, right? Whether it's in HR or maintenance or sales or master data. Today, we're really going to be talking about how we can use Fiori together with workflow and transactional orchestration to better support your end-to-end CapEx flow. So when you ask execs, what are the value drivers for digitalization of a key business process, like CapEx, they always talk about things like speed, particularly over the last 2 years when people have been working from home. We've had to digitalize our business processes quickly. And one of the key benefits of that is there's no more walking around with bits of paper. It has to be digital. And with automated workflow, we can get the benefits of parallelization and hopefully streamline the time it takes to get a concept from idea to execution. Reducing the admin efforts is a key benefit around rekeying and administrating of manual interfaces. So make us more efficient, be more effective, make the right decisions. At the end of the day, the whole process is there to support an executive make an important decision around which projects to progress, which to halt, and they need valid data and consistent data, and confidence that the information they're reviewing and the supporting documents are the latest versions to make the right business decisions. And then it's about risk. So once we do engage these projects, make sure we're on track and delivering the expected outcomes at the right cost. So if those are the goals of a CapEx process, how can Fiori help? It really helps in all these main aspects of user experience. Execs, don't want to work through SAP transactions, whether they're old ERP or S4HANA. They want to just think about a business process. This is the information to make a decision, make it as easy as possible for me. They want that confidence that the budget or the plan or the actual or the commitment or whatever number they're looking for is coming from the same single source of truth. That's always been a value proposition of SAP. No more important than in the CapEx process to have that reliability of the data. It's about automating those business rules and getting the right delegation of authority, the right people involved in reviewing or making a decision, enabling business processes from everywhere, and these days mainly from home. And everyone's more conscious of information security, and the more layers and external applications, the more manual intervention, the weaker your control concept is. So being able to secure all the sensitive data, and this is sensitive data, in your core business system just makes a lot of business sense. So all those aspects can be addressed by Fiori. What we find is that the CapEx cycle has typically been underinvested in. There's still a lot of manual processes out there around collating wish list items that come through from email and Excel spreadsheets and other external data repositories. Excel is still the predominant tool of choice when it comes to preparing annual budgets. I'm sure you all go through that in your departments on an annual basis. People have adopted a variety of workflow tools. Lotus Notes, we're still replacing Lotus Notes solutions today, SharePoint solutions, other bespoke workflow solutions are in play, all which take information from a spreadsheet and run through an approval workflow just so that somebody can retype it in to a forecast and ultimately into your SAP system to create a project that can be tracked. So a lot of systems, a lot of manual human glue in today's process. The vision is really a seamless flow all the way from the initial wish list. These are things I'd love to do next year. Please can I put them in the budget? Preparing that budget and maintaining that budget and adjusting and reprioritizing the projects in your portfolio as quickly as the business changes and imperatives change. The expenditure request, calling down those funds and formally distributing the budget to your projects for execution. Forecasting in an integrated system is a lot more convenient than trying to assemble your forecasts in Excel and collate them and put them together. Because for one thing, if you do it in your system, you have immediate access to your actuals and your budgets and your plans and your commitments and your tools. So really supporting more efficient forecasting. Even as an IT, you have to forecast the IT projects, know the pain involved with forecasting. So keep that in the same context. And then, at the end of the day, creating the fixed assets and settling them. These can all be delivered seamlessly from the one Fiori Launchpad and leverage all your back-end ERP or S4HANA transactions under the hood. So that's, I guess, our vision for many of our customers. Just briefly, what we mean between the difference between processes and transactions. If these dark blue areas are some of the SAP underlying components of appropriation requests, or investment programs, investment measures, your projects or orders, they're objects that are supported by direct standard Fiori apps, if you like, to go and maintain each of these elements directly. But what we're talking about is more process-centric Fiori apps, like a capital expenditure request. How does that actually orchestrate a number of transactions in the back end? One CapEx request, for example, may result in a supplement to a budget on a position, a distribution of budget from that position to a project. If that project doesn't yet exist, the creation of the project, the release of that project, the setting up of the forecasts and budgets on that project. So there's a number of different SAP transactions sitting behind one Fiori app end user experience. All right, so let's have a look at what this could look like in an actual SAP system. All right, so everyone's familiar with the SAP Fiori Launchpad. I hope you're all using it today and successfully engaging and delighting your users as to how much better or simpler this is than the SAP GUI. And essentially what we're helping our customers achieve is just more tiles on their Fiori Launchpad to specifically deal with the end-to-end CapEx process, those wish lists, those annual business planning, the CapEx, the forecast, the project completion, the scheduling and capacity and demand planning activities, and of course your process and data analytics. And I think that's where executives are most interested, is in that end result, the analytics. So I might just start with some key concepts. When it comes to investment management, it's always about the driver for the capital investment, and that's typically either around sustenance or growth, as well as compliance initiatives. So giving the executives an analysis of their budget by those key investment reasons, where they can track their total investment program budget and how much has been utilized, is a key analysis, or being able to analyze their investment budget by asset class or by individual plant. These are all slices that your execs are interested in. When they want to drill down on a particular class of investments, let's say IT investments, we want to be able to refresh all the investment positions underneath that. And often these are pools of funds that are set aside. And within each investment position, if I look at this IT enhancement, I've got a program budget of $1 million. I've only got 50,000 available to distribute. I've already distributed 950,000. I've spent 63, and I've got commitments of 41, and available project budget to spend of 846. If I want to see which projects actually made up those funds on that position, we can drill down. So I'm going from the investment program position to an overview of the projects within the investment program. And of course, my screen is not refreshing now. So there's a list of projects related to these IT projects, and some KPIs around budgets, forecasts, actuals, commitments, availability, and some KPI statuses, some charts, how we're tracking incurred and estimate to complete against our budget lines, by key projects. Obviously, all your analytics are tailored to support the way the organization assesses their capital projects. The key point here is by staying within the Fiori context, we get this idea of drilling down from a budget to a project, from a project line item to project details on reliable, accurate source data, whether that's around your actual costs, cost line items, being able to view that by cost element or vendor, all the way through to your commitments, be able to go in and edit the schedule lines on your commitments directly from your Fiori Launchpad experience. But really what we're talking today is how did we get to this project? How did we get to this budget? How did we get to do this? And are we delivering the business benefits we're expecting? The ability from within Fiori to drill all the way back to your originating, in this case, capital expenditure request. So where was the, who approved this funding and on what basis? So this is an example of a capital expenditure request Fiori app, which is highly tailored to the needs of many organizations. I think there's 5 or 6 different custom examples that are embedded in here. So this is not a realistic one. It's more it involves some concepts from a variety of Australian and international customers, but it gives you the sense of the things you can do as an executive when they get a CapEx request in a Fiori app. They might have some KPIs that they quickly want to assess. They're not going to look in the detail. They're going to say, how much is this going to cost us? What's the cash flow impact? Based on our ranking and scoring methodology, what priority index do we assign to this particular project? What's the NPV and IRR relative to our target IRR return? And on the basis of that snapshot of KPIs, they might have made a quick approval decision. By the way, if we do want to look at who made that decision, the next most important thing for most executives is to go and review the workflow and approval log. And they can see exactly the series of steps that was taken, who the individuals were that executed these steps, at what time they executed them, and any comments that might have been made along the way. A key point on digitalization of the process is that those workflows rules are highly dynamic. So if, for example, this project might have included an IT and an environmental health and safety component, when we then go and look at the workflow log, it would have added 2 additional steps. So the key concept here is when a CapEx request is being raised based on the attributes of the request, the initiator can immediately see the process flow that's about to be executed and be able to follow up in process with the IT manager if that's where it's the request is being blocked. So that's the first key concept: dynamic workflow driven by request attributes, whether it's by specialist areas or by value or by asset class, having a visibility of that information. Of course, because it's a Fiori app, all your search helps are live lookups from SAP within any of your grouping structures or hierarchy structures. So there's never any need to synchronize master data between SAP and a third-party CapEx management system. You've got immediate access to some of the justification information on the face of the request. So SAP is typically good at managing the classification and numbers, not necessarily so good in managing the qualitative descriptions, but you have the flexibility in your Fiori front end to supplement the core financial data with some justification. So bear that in mind. A key benefit of the Fiori interface in whatever business process, I'm just using CapEx as an example, is to be able to provide more of that justification data in addition to the numbers. Excel is still alive and well within the organization. So if you've got a costing sheet that's built in Excel, import it. If you want to review this in Excel, export it to Excel. So every time we have a grid in any of our Fiori apps, it's always, of course, possible to do the import export from Excel and the supporting documentation management, whether it's at a line item level or at a detailed attachment level. In this example, the request involved a asset disposal. Again, the benefit of being in the SAP environment, we can immediately look up the assets that are being disposed and bring back their actual net book value today and capture any sales conditions or recovery value if it's applicable. If the asset, if the project didn't involve a disposal, of course we would deactivate that. It simplifies our form. So the form complexity, being digital, can grow and expand to cover all the necessary information just in time, just based on the investment reason. You have different risk classifications, I guess, if you're talking about asset maintenance than if you're talking about an innovation project. So having the right data fields presented based on the right driving motivations, based on what's happening, based on the functional areas, is all a key feature of digitalization. The example there of a checklist for procurement. A key example here of bringing back the available budget in real time, so even the initiator knows how much is available in the bucket. So we skip that step in today's workflow, where it's always a call to finance and just confirm, was this item in the budget, yes or no, or what's the available balance on my pool. And by having the budget in SAP, it can be reconciled on a real-time basis with reliable source data. Cash flow is important, being able to maintain the cash flow forecasts. This is an example of a prioritization index based on some KPIs for a particular entity. Their weighting and their rating gives a priority index, which is another sorting method for the annual business planning. Your business case calculations can be right in the face of the spreadsheet, of the Fiori app, as opposed to the spreadsheet. It's amazing how many projects we'll do where we look at examples of business case calculations and point out, the Excel formula errors that have crept in over time into the calculation of things like NPV or IRR. But being able to, update, I guess, your key numbers in your business case calculations and know that you're consistently calculating NPV and IRR based on a standardized business case model directly on the face of your Fiori app is really convenient. And it's not just about the dollars, as we know in today's world. The constraint is also availability of internal, technical, and business resources whenever you're scheduling a project. So being able to look at your cash flow demand as well as your resourcing demand and allocate them directly in the face of the Fiori app, and then be able to do your resource optimization as well as your cash flow optimization when you're formalizing your portfolio is really a great convenience to our customers. Managing the attachments and the versions of the attachments all in one place, as you would imagine. So that's an example what this CapEx request would have done on the completion of the workflow. The data here would have been used to create the investment measure, distribute the budget, create the plan forecast, change statuses. So there are a number of SAP transactions being done in the backend, and whether it's an S4 HANA backend or an ERP backend, it's one tailored, intuitive user experience that your managers are working through. And that's starting at the middle. With many customers, they'll start their CapEx solution redesign with expenditure requests. That's the most visible piece. Depending on your timing, you might want to be doing your wish lists and budget appropriation and annual planning requests in the Fiori, or your downstream forecasting and asset creation, capitalization requests in Fiori. The end result, I guess, is to have all those processes in one launchpad on one single source of data. All right, and I'd love to demonstrate more of those apps to you. We're just running a bit out of time today, but please contact us if you'd like to see more. I guess some of the summary benefits of using Fiori to manage a critical business process like CapEx is that it's firstly cost effective. You're not paying any third-party licensing fees. It's using the technology you already have, including the skills that you already have to be increasingly self-sufficient. So you're avoiding that integration to third-party systems and just simplifying your landscape. It's low risk. The CapEx process is actually fundamentally well supported in SAP with a whole bunch of functionalities, including just the basic project systems. But it's, as opposed to acquiring a third-party solution and integrating it through, you can build it on that reliable foundation and have confidence that the data is secure and controlled and robust and scalable, to manage the world's largest capital-intensive industries. And with Fiori, I guess you get that real opportunity to tailor the experience to your organization's terminology, to your business rules, your standard classifications and justifications on the way through for the ease of executive comparison. Just a word of warning around some of the technical challenges implementing your own Fiori apps. Think about how you're going to add new fields so that it's easy. We find that Fiori apps are great for agile project delivery. Places like Toyota and Incitec Pivot, it's really gone well, being able to feed, play back rapidly the business requirements, because we know end users, they tend to only really know what they want when they see it. So having a framework there that enables you to add those fields quickly and reliably and consistently is an important aspect to your solution. Managing the request, as I mentioned, nothing happens until everyone agrees, and then a whole lot happens. So this idea of staging of a request through the workflow life cycle, and again, that concept applies whether it's a budget request, or a project completion request, or a master data request, and any other aspect of your business process solutions. Think about how you stage those requests, how you enable the business to administer their own workflow rules, how you maintain those audit logs and trails for any changes that are made on the way through. Give the process administrators tooling to be able to correct or investigate where things do fail, and often with that orchestration you do get blockages or technical reasons why things might not go so smoothly. So you need a way of being able to identify and log and reassign tasks. So there's some admin features, and then there's the integration as you move from ERP to S/4HANA. There might be some integration adjustments, but bear in mind that you've done all the hard work. You've created the user experience, you've created the business rules and the business process, and it might just be some technical enhancements at the end to adapt to the new frameworks. So you need a flexible integration framework. And we cover off these in our ArcUX app builder for SAP Fiori, which underpins the solution I'm showing you today. So 1 minute to go. How can ArcUX help you? So if CapEx seems like a good use case for you to get going with your Fiori journey, we'd be delighted to share some of our customer experience in designing effective and efficient CapEx processes in SAP. And if you need to convince your business executives why it's a good idea, be able to provide you with some demo apps, as well as, if you do proceed, some baseline apps that you can take and adopt to your requirements. And together with our Fiori App Builder tool, you have the ability to configure those apps very rapidly to your specific user interface, workflow, and SAP integration needs. All right, cool. Thanks, guys. We got through that in half an hour. Now, just some customers that were lovely to talk to. But I'll open that up for any questions. And perhaps whilst you're thinking of your questions for me, I might start off and ask Michael to ask a question back to the attendees around where you are on your Fiori journey today. So Michael, maybe you can flash up the first poll question. And while you're responding to that, if anyone else has got any questions, you can put through the chat channel. I can prepare an answer to those.
Sure. And we've got a few questions already, and I'll put those through when we get through these polls. But yeah, we'll run, as Richard said, just a few quick polls. We'll keep them up for about 40, 50 seconds each. So if you could just answer this one here, please select one. Where are you at in your Fiori journey? And I'm looking at some of the results coming through here. Interestingly, quite a few people saying they have a lot of Fiori custom Fiori apps, which is quite interesting, and probably the same number are saying they've got a lot of standard apps as well deployed, which is sort of what we expect.
That's really I would endorse that, Mark. We did a similar presentation about a year ago. And that number at the top, no Fiori yet, was much bigger than it is today. So I think there's really been an adoption of Fiori on the ecosystem, and exciting to see how organizations have deployed some standard apps and are really looking to extend that with custom Fiori apps.
Excellent. Yeah. So within the next question, what are the main tools you use for budget and expenditure management? Please select all that apply. And I'll just say to people, don't be embarrassed about putting Excel. We had another session probably last week or so where a lot of people saying we're still using Excel, which is fine. A lot of people are, and I think that's coming through quite strongly.
Well, I'm pleased to see no one in this audience is using SharePoint. That's also a good sign.
Yeah, so far no one. Word and Excel, that's expected with Excel. I think a lot of people still are, but ERP, investment, including investment management, 44% at this stage. So
we're talking to the converted.
Yeah, although we found with the other session, probably a lot of people still use a bit of a mix. But 24% with BPC, BW, Bob J, so a bit of a mix there. Okay. Yeah, still strong usage, probably almost 80% with Excel, but quite a mix there, and about 42% there with the SAP ERP. So that's interesting. We have another one. Yeah, what are your major challenges with managing capital expenditure today? So select all that apply to you, any or all that apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that budget availability is often a key challenge when it's not in the system, and having that visibility as to what's left in the pool.
Yeah.
The business case quality is where it all starts. If you don't get that definition right or the planning right, you're almost certain not to get the outcomes. And often from a ERP perspective or SAP perspective, we're largely focused on the execution once the projects have been approved offline through a business case, and responsible for the delivery of it. But really an opportunity to bring some of that early stage wish lists and business case qualification and classification into the mix, so that you've got that seamless flow from the idea through the budget, through the expenditure request, and then the execution to deliver the business outcomes.
Yeah, and this one, so forecasting expenditure accurately came out strongly, and the others were quite strong as well. So that's interesting. And we've got one more. I think there, Jen. Yeah, what are the benefits of what are the benefits you're seeking to achieve from integrating your CapEx process? So again, please select all that apply to you.
Yeah, I think that speed of
Yeah.
of approval for us in IT is a common source of frustration. We all have our pet project initiatives. We know they're good for the business, and certainly as a vendor, we're often stuck behind an approval process and just waiting for it to get through the chain of approvals.
Yeah.
One of our long-standing customers is Coca-Cola in Europe, 27 customers, 27 countries across Europe, and they have approval chains that can go up to 20 levels of approval to get a CapEx approved. So you can imagine how long that took before they had digitalization and one list, which is our mobile approvals.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll always finish that one. Yeah, so that one, yeah, we've got more timely and reliable budget status reporting. So again, a lot of interesting results here. Thanks everyone for participating. So we'll go through any questions. And Richard, we do have questions. And look, I'll put them to you. And Doug, if any need a little bit more attention or anything, don't worry about that. We'll just, you can take them offline and answer them in more detail. But we'll see if we can get through some of these. So if that's okay. So the first question came in from Paul, and he's asking, when would you use? I'm assuming he's saying this solution. He's saying, when would you use this over SAC, or would you use them both?
So I think that's the beauty. But look, our main goal is to keep SAP in the mix, right? Because there's lots of competition these days from new competitors. Even ServiceNow is becoming very active and trying to drive a lot of process digitalization. And I think for this group, our interest is keeping SAP as the predominant technology. And once we win that battle on the user experience side and the process orchestration side and the transactional processing side and the security side, when it comes to the analytics side, it just flows through naturally. So if you're lucky enough to have the Analytics Cloud in play, then naturally that would be the way that you gather that data and represent it. So it's all about keeping the SAP technology stack as the leader delivering solutions like this.
Sure. Rajesh then asked, where are budgets entered? How does BPC integrate with these apps?
Yeah, and it's a similar concept that everyone's got slightly different components in their mix and want to take advantage of that. And certainly when it comes to integrating some of those planning cycles around OpEx and CapEx, BPC plays a key role. And every organization would have to architect the solution appropriately. I guess the key point is when it comes to those more request and approval style aspects, that keep in mind that we have a good technology platform in Fiori that we can use, and we don't need to go outside of the technology stack to maybe it's the first budget we're asking for is for a wish list, right? So how do we put our wish lists into the system and gather them up in a better way than having to do it in departmental Excel workbooks?
Great. Next question is from Kin Su, and it's saying, in the demo that you did of resourcing demand, was network activity or work center used?
Yeah, and I think that's again the challenge, that some of us do that in greater detail in ERP, and others it's less formalized. Some of the critical resources that we're trying to manage here are not just technical maintenance engineers for the shutdown. I think those some of that detailed operations planning is almost better achieved in some of the source tools. But practically when it comes to some of these other finance and IT initiatives, we find that some of the key constraints are in the IT department, or even more critically in the business areas, right? So simply finance don't have enough folk to do all the projects that they would like to do. So knowing that this project involves some finance BAs and this one involves some procurement business folk allows the business to also plan and schedule their projects in according with both their business and technical capacities. And those business capacities are often not reflected in their and their work centers,
Yeah.
but can be accommodated in your Fiori apps.
Alex is saying, first of all, thank you, Richard, for the presentation. And he's saying it would be interesting to clarify whether you have standard analytics reporting pack or dashboards as part of the solution.
Yeah, similar answer to the rest. There's always, some customization of the analytics side. To be honest, a lot of customers are, using some of the Microsoft Power BI tools, to do some of that analysis. Some are using SAC, some of the, the legacy data warehousing tools. So I guess the key point is, you would use your current reporting frameworks that you have skills in and consistency in for end users, but have the knowledge that the data is all coming out of one place, I guess, is the key value proposition. Because there is value in knowing your budgets and your forecasts and your actuals and your annual commitments, all from one original data source. So yes, there are, we provide some defaults in process apps, directly on the transactional data sources, but that's a big area that customers would extend to their own needs with their own tools.
Right. Richard, we had a few people asking before this session, what would happen when you upgrade? What would happen to this solution or this if you're upgrading from ERP to S/4HANA?
So we have about 20 customers, and most of them are using Fiori on good old SAP ECC6. Some even lower than that. I think we've got some 4.5 versions. So you can run up a gateway server, and you can integrate to older back-end SAP systems. And then we've had some customers upgrade their back-ends in Flow, so during the project or immediately after the project, and having developed the Fiori apps and workflows in the gateway, meant that when they did upgrade their backends, that was a relatively seamless exercise. So the answer is, the real project has moved on from, I think, the technology. I think we have that mainly sorted. It's more about working with the business and understanding how they analyze competing project initiatives, how they would score and rank those initiatives and allocate budget and monitor it. So it's more about the business rules and user experience and analytics that the business need. That's the focus of the project. Once that's developed, and you can do that today with your current ERP systems, when you upgrade to whatever ECC, ERP, or S/4HANA backend version, you save all that hard work, right? So you keep the artifacts, you keep the forms, you keep the workflows. There might be some tweaks to the integration, but it's a relatively seamless upgrade in the future.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks, Richard, and thanks, everyone. We've just about run out of time, but look, if there are more questions, and I'm sure there are, please feel free to contact. You've got the details there, Richard, or even to us if you forget. But before we finish, just a few quick announcements. We do have a utilities SIG this Thursday, the 21st, so we'll be focusing on critical data cloud. And then we have next week on the 27th, Technology and Platform SIG, which we're looking at BTP and also infrastructure in terms of your SAP systems infrastructure. And of course, our big first in-person conference in 2.5 years. It's our Brisbane conference on the 12th of May. You're all invited to register and attend that. All the details are on the SAUG website. So thanks a lot, Richard and IQX Business Solutions, for your support and for this really interesting session. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope to see you at the next event, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.